Hey, Redberry Leo here. What if you had a general idea of what makes people want to do what they're doing? Or if someone was interested in doing something or if they weren't? What is intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? Today we are discussing what motivates people. So in the little introduction that we had here, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation are two different sides to motivation that we'll be talking about today. So extrinsic, so if you look at the base word and the different parts to it, X at the beginning of it, the prefix of it, it talks about external or the outside of the person. And intrinsic talks about inside of the person. So understanding that, extrinsic motivation is outside factors outside of the person that get them excited and interested in doing something. So an example of this would be, let's say I give you $20 if you go complete this task. Or like for chores with parents and their kids, if the parent says, I will give you a weekly allowance of 25 cents if you complete all of your chores, like take out the trash, clean the bathroom, take care of the dog, like walk the dog, pick up after the dog, then you will get your allowance. Which, by the way, I did used to get 25 cents as an allowance, which was pretty exciting because we would go yard sailing and everything, but that's a whole other tangent. So extrinsic motivation is by using external factors to get people motivated to go do it. Intrinsic motivation is within the self. So I am invested in the success of my unit because I want to give back to it. And so I am personally, internally motivated by like my own thoughts, my passion, my enthusiasm to go forth and put in some effort. Here's an example of intrinsic motivation. Let's say Cadet Stewie, wants to do really, really well on his Earhart test. And the reason why he wants to do well is because he has worked so hard over the past few years and wants to work actively to study and show that he is proud of himself, that he has accomplished something, and that he can give back to the unit as a cadet captain when he promotes to it. That cadet, there are some internal and external factors. So the external motivation might be that he could potentially serve as the cadet commander because it's preferred that cadet commanders or cadet captain or higher. So there might be that motivating factor. There's also like the sense of feeling pride and wanting to go forth, better oneself, and better the unit. And like the unit part is a little bit of both intrinsic and extrinsic because like they could see the squadron doing stuff, like Cadet Stewie could see the squadron doing stuff for themselves, or like they want to give back to the unit. So that's just a little bit on like an example of extrinsic versus intrinsic. So let's do some practice. I want you to get out a sheet of paper. I don't know if you're actually going to do it or not, but if you are interested in doing this, go ahead and grab a sheet of paper. I'm going to give you 3 examples. And I want you to say if it's intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. So my first example is that a child wants to do well on their test so that their parents don't get mad when they go home. My second example is that a game developer rushes and crunches towards a deadline. And my third example is that a bear chases after a person who tried to attack its cubs. So let's go to example number 1. What do you think it is? Do you think it's extrinsic or intrinsic? So remember, this child is trying to do well on their test because of their parents. So that would be an extrinsic factor or an extrinsic source of motivation because the parents, an external source, are motivating the student to do well on their test and they are avoiding punishment. And punishment is a whole other discussion. But they are motivated externally, and it's not like they personally want to do well on the test, it's just that they don't want to get in trouble with their parents. And then that second example, if you remember what that one was, it's the game developer who is crunching towards the deadline. That one is also external because it's like the studio might have set a deadline, or the publisher, or like it was promised to the audience that the game would come out at a specific time and you need to debug before it's sent out to everyone, or else it could be problematic when it's released. So that would also be extrinsic. And then there's that final example. The bear is chasing a person who attacked its cubs. That would also be extrinsic motivation. And that's because that external force, that person, has motivated that bear to protect its cubs because the person might have been getting too close, taking pictures and everything, and so it was being protective. So in those three examples, all three of them were extrinsic. So now I want you to think of an example of what might be intrinsic, and I want you to put it in the comments down below. At least if you've been watching this far, then you're obviously invested in the video. So what do you think of it as an example of intrinsic motivation? Go ahead and type it now. You can pause the video if you want. I mean, I already provided a few examples earlier, so I hope that you aren't copying those. But motivation is a very valuable thing to understand because people join organizations and they do things for a number of reasons. And it's not necessarily always intrinsic or extrinsic. Like, someone might be submitting their paperwork on a community service ribbon because they did the service to just get the ribbon. And that would be extrinsic motivation because they're just getting the ribbon. But there's also another side to it where the person might have already done a ton of community service outside of like Civil Air Patrol, which is where the community service ribbon comes into play. And they are really excited about supporting the community because they want to make the world a better place. And they want to set that example. That's more of an intrinsic, internal motivating factor. So they could be like, I'm doing the community service in addition to wanting to get the ribbon. And as a leader, if you understand both aspects of it, you can motivate people through different means. So it's a little bit harder to do extrinsic motivation in terms of like rewards, because in CAP, like there's only really so much you can do to reward people for their efforts other than like, you got the experience, pat on the back. But I'm just saying that if you are taking tools for your leadership toolbox, the key takeaways are some people are internally motivated, some of them are externally motivated, and depending on that person, there will be specific tactics that may work for one while not working for another. So that's just something to keep in mind. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I try to make it interactive and interesting. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and that is all, folks. Until next time, toodles.